Hello and welcome to this special episode of the Wine Pair Podcast. I'm Joe, your sommelier of reasonably priced wine, and for this special episode, I'm on my own, as my wine pairing partner in crime is busy making cakes for her Baby Cakes micro bakery, which, by the way, you can learn more about if you head over to her website, lovebabykakes.com. Today, we're going to introduce you to Kurtis Ogasawara, the Director of Winemaking at Robert Mondavi Winery. Robert Mondavi Winery is one of the wineries that put Napa and America on the winemaking map. And you will hear Kurtis talk about their famous Tokelon Vineyard in Oakville, where they introduced the world to their first famous wine, Fumé Blanc. Now, Kurtis is a bit of a Renaissance man, an athlete and a scientist who found his way into winemaking, but more about him in a minute. First, as a quick orientation to what we usually do in our podcast, in most episodes we learn about, taste, and review 2 to 3 wines that are reasonably priced, which means under $25 each and should be easy to find. However, for this special set of episodes, we interview people who are involved in actually making wine, because part of what we want to do with our podcast is to educate ourselves and you on different aspects of wine knowledge in a fun, entertaining, and unstuffy way, even fun and entertaining, as Decanter Magazine has called our podcast. And that is what we're doing today. And a small plug before we get to the interview with Kurtis: if you like what you're hearing or are interested in hearing more of our other regular episodes, please subscribe to or follow our podcast so you can hear more, especially since you're only getting one half of the Wine Pair podcast in this episode. You can also go to our website, thewinepairpodcast.com, to send us a note or subscribe to our newsletter. You can follow us on Instagram and Blue Sky at the Wine Pair Podcast, and if you like what you're hearing, you can even leave us a nice rating and review. We don't mind. But let's get on to the interview with Kurtis. Hi, Kurtis. Great to have you on board.
How you doing? Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Oh, yeah. We are so excited to have you with us and hear about your story. This is about you, Kurtis. This is all about you. We want to know about your career and your background and what you're doing. So we want to know the whole thing. So kind of on that note, I think we just jump in and get started. I always like to ask, and I know a little bit about your background from doing some research, but the folks at home don't know.
Yeah.
And so what I'd love to understand is tell us a little bit about, you as a youngster, like growing up. And I'm always curious about whether or not there was any wine in your background at all as a growing up. And then we can get into sort of more of the story about how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, sounds great. Yeah, so I grew up in Sunnyvale, California, in the Bay Area, and wine was not a huge part of my family. It wasn't a big part of our life. Like there was wine in the house, there's some in the closet at the bottom, kind of stuck under stuff. But it wasn't something that we drank every day. Didn't have a family culture of drinking wine kind of daily and enjoying that lifestyle. I grew up playing a lot of sports. My brother and sister played sports. I was a gymnast as a kid and transitioned into wrestling. And, that was what I focused on. It was getting a great education and wrestling. And it was just my focus. And I wanted to get to college, do Division I and kind of just excel with that. So as I was looking at schools in college, I didn't know what I wanted to be. I had no idea. You're an 18-year-old kid. You have no idea what you want to major in. And I was doing well in math, actually. So I thought, hey, you need a lot of math and engineering. Maybe I'll get into that. So as I was looking at the options to wrestle and get a great education, I found Davis or Cal Poly. And I ended up choosing UC Davis just because, they were Division I Pac-10 for the program. They were a great UC school, and I knew I could get a great education. So that was kind of where I wanted to head. So I declared my major as mechanical engineering and, started getting into the general classes and quickly learned, hey, I don't know if I want to be an engineer. I didn't really know what that would be. And I just, had to just figure it out. So I started dabbling all over the place and taking different entry-level courses. I thought because I was an athlete, I'd get into kinesiology or something, but that just didn't feel right as well. And I took an intro to winemaking class at Davis, and that was the first one that really opened my eyes. It was a really broad class that taught you about the different regions, general wine styles, what makes wine special. And it just kind of grabbed my attention. And at the same time, my brother was a chef. So, I thought, hey, maybe in the future he could cook, I could make the wine, we could pair up and do something in the future. So I just kind of started with the wine industry in my career and just really loved it. It's really the balance of agriculture, science, and art. And I really believe that that's true. And it's just something that you continue to learn, you continue to grow, and each year you have a new opportunity with you. You have a new vintage where you could do something special. And I really connect that with sports. It's like you have your season during the sports and you have your off season. So you're training in the off season, you're learning from your mistakes, you're growing, you're getting stronger, you're building your palate, you're building your team. And then once harvest comes or the season, you put everything into it and you give it your all. It's the teamwork, is camaraderie, that you're working together, putting all your passion into something where you can create a wine that can be shared with the world. And that's something that's super special to me.
Yeah, I love that. I'm really excited to dig into some of these other areas with you around winemaking. I'm intrigued a little bit. I didn't know this, that your brother's a chef. Was there in your background, now you said there wasn't a lot of wine in your background, but was there a lot of like food, culinary? Was that a big part of, because we always think about food when we
Yep,
talk about it, the connection between food and wine, that, wine is the fifth food group. So was there
yep.
a lot around like food and cuisine growing up?
Definitely. I mean, just food was so important. Like many families, it's something that brings people together. We have a lot of family dinners with cousins and uncles and grandparents, and all of our things, just like many families, were centered around food, whether it's making something at home or going out and enjoying that. And now it's great because now that I'm a winemaker and now I understand wine, it's just marrying those two together, which is natural across the world. But for us, it was just all about the food. And so it's really cool to be able to kind of see the other side of that and put it together because they're meant for each other. Food and wine is just an amazing thing. They work with each other to be great, and it's something that really brings people together. So it makes sense that, yeah. Now that you say that, that's a great kind of point that you brought up because I never thought of that part. But yeah, food's been such an important part of my life for sure.
Yeah, I mean, of all of the kind of alcoholic beverages, it's wine that is most associated with food and being together and family. So it makes sense to me. And maybe there in the back of your brain there was that kind of connection.
Yeah.
So you were going to go into mechanical engineering. I know the way that my mom was growing up. When you told your parents that you were going to go into wine, how did they react?
I think they were just not confused, but kind of like, okay. Because, growing up in a household where wine, we weren't focused on it, I think that wasn't thought of a career, right? It's just something that was distant from us, not physically far away from Napa, but just as a culture, as like a career, that wasn't something that was first in mind. So I think that once I told them that, they're like, oh, that's interesting. But kind of how I've been is I've always just worked really hard. I've always been focused on what I'm passionate about and put my whole into it. So I think they knew that if this was something that I wanted to do and I was focused on it, they would support me with it. But it was definitely like, oh, winemaker, okay. But now they kind of get it. They get it a lot more because, it's been many years now, but it was definitely a surprise to my family.
Yeah, well, I'm sure like all parents, they see you're successful in what you've chosen to do and what you're passionate about, and they are super supportive of it.
Yep, definitely.
I noticed this a lot. So there are some people that I talk to who sort of grew up in winemaking or grew up with a lot of that in their background. And then it seems to me there are a lot of people that I talk to, especially in the United States, who started out as science, like in sciences, and then end up going into viticulture. So I'm curious if that was a draw for you, sort of as you, I mean, as you were thinking about what you wanted to do, it seems to me that sciences was at least something you were very interested in, and if that was part of the draw into wine as well.
Yeah, definitely actually, because I was good at math, I was good at sciences. I did well in school with it, and my first internship was at Napa as a lab tech. That was kind of like my gateway drug into the industry, and for me, it made sense because my mind's fairly analytical. So the lab works very straightforward. There's numbers. You get a number, and if it's inside or outside of the range, it affects the palate. And for me, it was also learning about how those numbers corresponded to how they taste, how we make it, what decisions we do in the cellar to create a wine that's beautiful. But it was easy for me to kind of connect with winemaking first through the analysis and understand that part of it. And then I slowly learned the art, learned the agriculture, and built that all together and combined it. So it was a good connection and an easy way for me for how my mind works to get into it.
And this connection of art and science, it's actually a question that I always ask, and it was just nice in the information that I read about you that you bring this up, this whole art and science piece.
Yeah.
As you have matured as a winemaker and you think about, how you make wine today, do you feel that you lean more on the art of it or the science, or is it a balance? And has that changed over the course of your career?
I think it's a balance. I think you need both. Numbers are helpful in making decisions, but really for me, it's all about your palate. It's about what you're tasting, how things are going during fermentation, what changes can you make. Not always is there a number that correlates to that, but more of experience and getting your reps in and tasting and learning from many vintages where you can understand with if I do this in the fermenter, it's going to do this or vice versa. So it's that really artful way of also trying to express how do you want your consumers, your guests to taste these wines? What's the experience that you want them to have? What's the story you're trying to tell? And so I think that's the important part of the art because you can make wine by the numbers, but if you don't have that passion and energy into it, it's a different experience. So it's really that art and trying to express yourself to people and tell that story.
And do you get the chance as a winemaker? Because some winemakers we talk to do get to, and some don't. Do you get to spend time with the grapes? Do you get to spend time in the vineyard as well?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it's so important. Great wines are made in the vineyard. We work really closely with our vineyard team to make sure that we're on the same page. We taste together, we walk together. Every decision that they make affects our wines, and what we do in the cellar affects what they did out there, So it's kind of like that full circle thing where we need to understand each other. We need to taste to see what trials we were doing out in the vineyard to see if it worked or if it improved the wine or made it worse, and then we correct that the next year. So, that connection and with the vineyard team and the actual vineyard itself is super important and something that is crucial, and it just can't be taken out of the equation for me.
And as you again have progressed in your career, is that something that has changed? And a lot of people you started out as a lab tech and those kinds of things, and maybe I don't know, maybe you didn't spend as much time with the grapes of the vineyard. So has that adjusted over time? How much time you spend in the vineyard?
Yeah, I mean, definitely as I transition from the lab into the winemaking side, that just correlates with more time in the vineyard and understanding where your grapes are coming from. Why do they taste this way? Why are they a little bit more concentrated here? Why are they more dilute here? And what changes can we do in the field to improve that? So yeah, definitely over time you get more comfortable and more experience, more reps out in the vineyard to make sure that you understand what's going on. Because if you don't understand what's going on out there, it's not going to be as much sense in the winery and into the bottle. So it's all one unit, one team.
And how are you all dealing with the impacts of climate change? I always like to say, if you want to know if climate change is real or not, talk to a farmer.
Yeah.
And, making grapes is obviously farm work. How are you thinking about kind of dealing with the changes in climate, increases in temperature? How is that showing up for you?
I mean, I think it's a lot of water usage, how we're using water, when and how much, how frequent. It's about our canopy development. How are we leafing or doing less leafing in case there is heat waves that come? I think, a lot of vineyards out there in the past, you'd kind of strip down the canopy completely and expose the clusters. But now with these potential for heat waves, once the leaves are gone, they're gone. So if you leave them a little bit earlier in the season, you have the opportunity to pull it. But if you're pulled, it's already gone. So we're trying to just thinking about how we can protect the fruit a little bit more. Just as seasons come, you learn something else each year, and it gives you something else to experience and grow upon. So we're just taking it one year at a time and seeing what we can do.
Super interesting. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. The fact that how important the canopy is, and maybe thinking about that differently every year, and having to react every year differently to whatever the season is giving. And that's probably happened for forever in
Hmm.
winemaking anyway.
Yep.
Going back to sort of your career as a winemaker, you've worked at many different wineries before you ended up at Robert Mondavi.
Yep.
But were there people, or was there a person as you were kind of younger in your career, maybe even recently, who was really influential, who mentored you or really kind of taught you the ropes?
Yeah, I mean, I think my biggest mentor has been Genevieve Janssens. She was the director of winemaking here at Robert Mondavi for many, many years. So, I started here in 2015, 10 years ago, as the enologist. And she kind of took me under her wing. I learned from her and the other winemakers on the team. But she's been the person that has been really influential in the way I think about wine, what we do in the vineyard, how that translates to the winery, what the practices here at Robert Mondavi are, and why. Understanding the story of that person, why he's been such an important part of the wine industry and this winery here, and kind of the way that we blend. So kind of just everything. She's been really the one that has taken me from, someone that's early in my winemaking career to where I am today. I mean, I'm still early in my career, but I've learned so much from her and other winemakers at this winery that it's been so important to me. So I keep her close to me and someone that's really important for me.
Yeah, that's great. Just to probe a little bit more on that, how do you define yourself as a winemaker? Like, what makes you the kind of winemaker you are? And has she influenced that, or have others influenced that? And what do you feel is sort of unique to you as well?
Yeah. I mean, the way I look at wines is that we're trying to express the vineyards and the differences and the distinctness of different sites and why they're special, right? There's wineries all over the Napa Valley. Everyone's special in their own way, but they're showing off their piece of land that they're proud of, that piece of soil that's different than ours. So I think it's really important for us to make wines that speak to that and show a sense of place and show that these vineyards are different from others and why. And it's really about the details about whether it's farming or cellar practices or how we blend. It's the small percentages of improvement that you can make year after year to improve your wines and really focusing on those details and learning and growing and evolving your style, not being stuck in doing things a specific way.
You don't have to share all your secrets, but is there an approach, a specific type of approach that you take, or an expectation you have of the types of wines you create, or are you more global and maybe this for these types of wines there's a different type of style? I'm just curious if there's something you feel that defines your style.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a distinct style at Robert Mondavi Winery. We've been in the valley for almost 60 years now, and there's a sense of, we've been successful over those years. There's some parts of that I don't want to change. There's some, it's all about freshness, intensity, about elegance, having great structures, very ageable wines. And that's something that I've learned from John Viev and tasting wines from many vintages across Robert Mondavi that I want to keep. But I think also we're just tweaking things to making sure that wines are ready to go when people buy them as well. So it's kind of that balance of wines that are approachable, but also wines that have great ageability and also showing off little bits and pieces of the vineyard that maybe we haven't in the past. So we're working really closely with the vineyard managers, the director of viticulture, to make sure that we can find bits of vineyards or bits of blocks even that we weren't highlighting in the past, but now we can because there's so much opportunity out there. It's kind of nonstop. So I'm excited about that.
And is there something about Robert Mondavi that to you sort of sets it apart or differently from other Napa wineries or other wineries around the world?
Yeah, I think there's a few things. I think one, it's the people. It's the people that have worked here. It's Robert Mondavi himself. It's that mindset of trying to create wines that can stand amongst the finest in the world. That's been really important for us. And of course, it's the vineyards. To Kalan Vineyard is a very special vineyard, one of the best vineyards in the world, and that's our backyard. So, it's the sense of people here, the history that we have, the continued experience that we have that's been passed down through the generations, and also our vineyards that make us unique and different from others in the valley.
And I'll bring it up because you mentioned it, but Tokalan was certified organic recently. Was that an
Yeah,
important thing for you all?
yeah, definitely. So that it was certified organic in January of 2023. It's something that was really important for everyone in the winery. In the earlier days, Tokalan was farmed organically, but not certified. And so we wanted to kind of bring that full circle and just make the right decision, farm it organically, get it certified through the CCOF. So something that was really important, and a huge hats off to the vineyard team because it's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of paperwork. It's a lot of detail, but it really shows through the wines. I think that a lot of these blocks are showing their personality a bit more than they did in the past. It's always hard to put your finger on, is this organic? Is this the vintage? Is this, et cetera? There's so many different variables, but I do feel like there's a lot more intensity in our wines and blocks are tasting more unique and showing off their personality more than before.
I just want to say, editorial comment, there's something in the way that you talk that I can really hear your athletic background. And I think it's interesting because you were a D1 wrestler, and wrestling is one of those sports where it's an individual sport, but there's also a team. So you talk a lot about the team, which I think is
Hmm.
really cool because you
Yep.
do. Like if you're going to be successful, you have to have a team, you have to have teammates that challenge you, they have to achieve, but you are also very responsible for your own stuff as a,
Yeah.
as a wrestler. And I'm sure that there are corollaries that you see in the day to day of what you do.
Yeah, definitely. It's just that cyclical thing of a harvest that relates to sports so much. It's about coming together as a team. Like I'm the one that's fortunate to be talking to you today, but I want to be here with the team for the winery team, the lab team, the hospitality, et cetera. There's so many different people in the background that are working their butts off to make sure that we're making the best wines in the world. So I'm really thankful that we have such a great team, such a great set of experiences across the winery, and we can all come together to create something that's really special. But yeah, there's that bit of working by yourself, but you need others around you to learn and grow and evolve.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's great. And it's a great sense of the way that the Robert Mondavi operates, how you operate that I think is really important to get across.
Yep.
So let's talk a little bit about the wines. Are there any wines that you would say, "Oh, I'm, super proud of this," or "This is a wine that I feel is very representative of the way that you like to make wines"?
Yeah, there's a lot of those wines in our that we create here at Robert Mondavi. I think, our Fumé Blanc is really special. We're the only producer in Tokalam Vineyard to have a white variety grown. So the Sauvignon Blanc and Semillon that's grown in Tokalam Vineyard and our property in Stag's Leap are just stellar, amazing. I think that those have a really strong tie to the history of Robert Mondavi Winery themselves, and they have such a unique personality that just shout out of the glass, both like, as a story, but aromatically on the palate. There's a lot of freshness and intensity and those things that you look for in a great wine. They're wines that are great today, but they're going to sell for decades. So I think the Fumé Blancs that we create here are really special, and they've got a little bit of magic to them.
Is there anything coming out now or that you have done recently that you're super excited about?
Yeah, we work with a lot of great blocks here in Tokalam Vineyard, and we're starting to showcase some single varietal wines that we didn't do in the past, or not as much in the past. So there's a few small wine club SKUs that are coming out that are really exciting. We're highlighting different vineyards that we're working with, so different AVAs that maybe we haven't focused on in the past. So I think there's just this great opportunity because we have so much great fruit that we farm. We work with these amazing growers across Napa Valley, and for me, it's all about shouting and showing those off to the world. So there's some fun stuff coming out. I'm excited for the next couple of years. Join the wine club because these wines are only going to be found there, and they're just really cool. Whether they're like 100 cases or 400 cases, there's some really fun wines that I'm excited about.
That's awesome. We'll give a little bit of time at the end too to talk about the wine club. One thing that you mentioned was single varietals. Napa is sort of known for Bordeaux style blends, Bordeaux wines, a lot of Cabernet, but I also read about you introducing some Burgundian wines as well. And
Mhm.
so, how is that? Like, how has there been a shift and expansion in the way that Robert Mondavi thinks about wines that they create?
No, I mean, Chardonnay and Pinot have been an important part of the winery since the beginning. I think I've seen this old newspaper clipping of the first load of grapes that came into Mondavi and his load of Pinot, which was surprising. So, it's something that ties back to the roots and still important with the winery here. We've got some really cool vineyards that we've been working with for a long time that we're excited to make those wines with. So Chardonnay and Pinot have been important since the start, and they're a different personality than the Cabs and the Sauvignon Blanc, but that's kind of the point. We want to have wines that are distinct and different, and different offerings for our guests here at the winery, so they could have something that they enjoy personally.
That is super interesting that the first grapes that came in were Pinot Noir. I would not have guessed that. It's in
Yeah.
Napa. So that's great. Is there something, interesting, surprising that you've learned about yourself as you've gone on this journey of being a winemaker?
That's a great question. I mean, growing up, since wine wasn't part of my life, I didn't have a palate for it, and I've really grown to have that. I love wine now. I love making it. I think that's probably the most surprising thing because it just honestly, it wasn't something that I even thought was a career possibility. And I think that's one thing that I think is great now is that I can talk to friends, to family, to students, to future people who are looking for a career and to tell them that the wine industry is amazing. You don't have to be a winemaker. You can work in the vineyard, you can work in the lab, you could work in hospitality, but there's so many different pieces and facets of the wine industry that you could join in that are an option that many people just don't know about. So I think that's one of the things that's important to get out there is how fun of an industry this is. You go to great dinners and taste great wines. It's all about people that are happy and celebrating something or coming together with their family and friends. So it's a great kind of family to be part of.
Yeah, I think that's a great call out because we think about wine as this thing that comes in a bottle that we pour on our table, but there are tons of people doing lots of different things from marketing to operations to the business piece of it, et cetera, that make the whole thing happen. So I think that's a really good perspective to give that making a wine is a quite not just the making of the wine itself, but the whole brand, et cetera, is a quite complex process.
Exactly. I mean, yeah, there's so many people that are working to make sure that people know about this winery and about the wines and marketing and branding and all those fun things. You can go down many different avenues and still end up in the wine industry. It's pretty awesome.
So I understand that there's something going on at the winery, maybe a renovation. Can you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's a huge project going on here at the winery in Oakville. We're actually renovating the entire campus. So, operations, where we make the wine physically, where our offices are, the entire hospitality center is getting redone. It's a really exciting thing that's been in the works, kind of planned for, 5, 10 years ago. But now it's finally taken light and you can see it. You can see the new hospitality wing going in physically. We're really taking advantage of the beautiful To Kalon vineyard that we sit upon. So a lot more floor to ceiling glass and really pulling in our consumers to the vineyard. So you can sit on a balcony and where the wine was picked, 20 feet away from, and now you're enjoying it in the glass. It's this really cool experience that we're excited about. And it's such a beautiful spot here in Oakville. We just want people to experience that and understand why Robert Mondavi chose this piece of dirt to create a winery in.
Yeah, that's great. I would love to visit. I kind of feel like a lot of wineries went through probably the same. I'm assuming this is the same with Robert Mondavi, where COVID was kind of like, oh my gosh, not a lot of visitors, et cetera. And it feels like there's a lot of this going on right now where people are loving the ability to go and visit wineries, see the places, not just the tasting room, but the places where the wines are made. And so that's very exciting. A lot of wine tourism.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's just a special thing. People often see wines on a shelf and they take it home, but to come to the place where it's made and see the vineyards and connect with the people that are the passion behind a winery, it just makes that experience so much greater. And then you can go back home and pick up a bottle off the shelf and buy it and just have that connection of your experience that you had at the winery in the vineyard, talking to people who actually physically had their hands in the wine. It's a pretty special thing.
Love it. Okay, Chris, I'm going to now go to maybe the most important question that we ask in our interviews. So, my wife and I are part of an Italian American family. And so, when you were talking about family and getting together and eating, similar to your family, like this is a big deal. Like
Yep.
every Sunday night, we have Sunday night dinner, and it's like must see TV. Like you got to be there. So we're inviting you. Like I don't know how often you get up to Seattle, but I'm telling you, I nobody's taken us up on this yet. But I promise that if you're up in Seattle and you tell us, we will bring you to Sunday night dinner, and it's a big deal. It's not a
Oh,
little
wow.
thing. It'd be like
Yeah.
being invited to your family meals. I'm sure it's like, hey, you got to be special to be invited. So
Wow. Thank you. I appreciate that.
so here's the deal, though. It's there's a price to pay, and the price is what wine are you bringing? So I'll talk a little bit about it. It's going to be sort of a maybe what you would expect for a typical kind of Italian American meal. We'll start out with appetizers, some
Mhm.
salumi, charcuterie, that kind of thing. And then we'll have the first course, which will be a pasta, probably a red sauce pasta, and then we'll have the second course, and that will be a meat dish. Like think of it as
Okay.
some sort of meat dish, and then we'll do dessert, whatever. But what wines are you bringing for Sunday night dinner?
Oh, for sure, the white wine I'd bring is Robert Mondavi To Kalon Vineyard Fumé Blanc Reserve. A wine that we talked about, but just so much intensity and power and elegance to it. Something that really speaks to what we do here at Robert Mondavi Winery and just wines that are just great across the world. Things that can pair with food super well. They're just beautiful, intense. fresh wines that I think would pair with many different kinds of foods. And then we've got to bring a To Kalon cab as well, so that we can do something with the meat course. To Kalon's world renowned for Cabernet. So I think we do a great job with our Cabernets, and they have their own distinct personality, and just something that we love to share with people and tell the story. And that's really what makes this winery special is that Cabernet that Robert Mondavi started years ago.
All right, you're in. You just let us know anytime you're in Seattle. You can just come up anyway. You can just say like, "Hey, I need a good home cooked meal." You come, and we're in. We want to taste those wines. That sounds awesome.
Well, thank you so much. That'd be amazing. I'd love to come.
Well, thanks, so much for talking with us today. It's been really great. I've really appreciated it and appreciate your transparency and openness with sharing and all the information that you've given us. Before we go, we'd love to give people more information about Robert Mondavi Winery, how to contact, etc. So anything you want to share, and we'll bring this back up at the end of the episode when I do the outro, but anything you want to share would be great.
Sure. I mean, you guys could start at robertmondaviwinery.com. Come check out our story, understand what wines we're creating. We are renovating the winery, but we have this beautiful tasting room in downtown Napa where we're hosting guests while during the construction. So come on down. You can still have a place to come and experience what we do at the winery, have a great meal, have some great wines, and just experience Napa Valley a little bit more. We'd love to have you guys.
Great. Thank you very much. Well, Kurtis, it's been an absolute honor. Really great talking with you. I've really enjoyed it. And we are really looking forward to, again, having you for Sunday night dinner, but also visiting Robert Mondavi Winery, especially when that new tasting room is open.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. It was a lot of fun today.
Thank you so very much for listening to our interview with Kurtis Ogasawara. And I just have to say, I am sure you heard it in the interview. Kurtis is really a great person, easy to talk to, and super natural. Now, in case you're worried about how to get in touch with Robert Mondavi Winery, don't worry. You can find out all of this information on our website, thewinepairpodcast.com, in our show notes for this episode. But so you have it, here again is the information about how to find out more. The website is robertmondaviwinery.com. Instagram is at Robert Mondavi, and email is wineclub@robertmondaviwinery.com if you're interested in learning more about the wine club. And you can also go to reservations at robertmondaviwinery.com if you're interested in visiting the tasting room. And we hope you'll check out Robert Mondavi Wines and see and taste what Kurtis is putting together. But we hope you'll also subscribe to our podcast, The Wine Pair Podcast, and follow us on Instagram and Blue Sky, and visit our website, thewinepairpodcast.com, where you can reach out to us and sign up for our newsletter. And you can always reach out to me at joe@thewinepairpodcast.com if you want more information, or maybe you have a winemaker that you want to introduce us to. But anyway, we look forward to hearing from you. But for now, it's time to go. And as we like to say, life is short, so stop drinking shitty wine. Bye-bye.
Garden of my imagination, I disregard it in my contemplation. How much I need you, how much you love me, and the happy ending at the end of our story. Always think too much, always drink too much, always pray too much.